Whether you agree with capital punishment or not, it still exists. Over the years, thousands of inmates have been executed by lethal injection, the electric chair, and many other ways. A main tradition of capital punishment is when the inmate being executed is given a chance to request whatever they want for their final meal. This is said to be a tradition for the inmate to make peace with the executioner. Over the years, there have been many weird last meal requests, and here are 7 of them. Ronnie Lee Gardner. In October 1984, Ronnie Lee Gardner killed Melvin John Otterstrom during a robbery in Salt Lake City. While being moved to a court hearing for the homicide he committed in April 1985, he fatally shot attorney Michael Burdell in an unsuccessful escape attempt. He was convicted of 2 counts of murder, where he was sentenced to life imprisonment for the first count and received the death penalty for the second. Gardner's execution at Utah State Prison became the focus of media attention in June 2010 because it was the first time in 14 years where execution was carried out by firing squad in the United States. Gardner stated that he chose this method of execution because of his Mormon background. While Gardner's last meal request was not strange at all, what he wanted along with the meal was what was surprising. The meal he requested was lobster tail, steak, apple pie, vanilla ice cream, and 7-Up. The surprising request was that he wanted to enjoy this well-thought-out meal while watching the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Timothy McVeigh. Timothy James McVeigh was an American domestic terrorist who carried out the 1995 Oklahoma City bombing that killed 168 people, 19 of whom were children, and injured more than 680 others, and destroyed 1/3 of the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building. The bombing was the deadliest act of terrorism in the United States prior to the 9/11 attacks, and it remains one of the deadliest acts of domestic terrorism in U.S. history. McVeigh sought revenge against the federal government for the 1993 Waco siege and the 1992 Ruby Ridge incident in American foreign policy. He hoped to inspire revolution against the federal government and defended his actions, saying that it was a legitimate tactic against what he saw as a tyrannical government. He was arrested shortly after the bombing and indicted on 160 state offenses and 11 federal offenses, including the use of a weapon of mass destruction. He was found guilty on all counts in 1997 and sentenced to death. McVeigh was executed by lethal injection on June 11 of 2001, and his last meal request was 2 pints of mint chocolate chip ice cream. Ricky Ray Rector. When a friend who could not pay the $3 cover charge and was refused entry to a dance hall at Tommy's old-fashioned homestyle restaurant in Conway, Rector pulled a .38 caliber pistol and fired several shots, wounding 2 and killing a third man named Arthur Criswell, who died almost instantly with fatal shots to the throat and to the forehead. Rector fled in the scene of the murder in a friend's car and hid in the woods or with relatives for 3 days. However, his sister convinced him to turn himself in, but Rector agreed to talk to Officer Robert Martin, whom he had known since he was a child, and no one else. When he met Martin, instead of turning himself in, Rector shot Martin in the jaw and in the neck, killing him. Afterwards, Rector attempted to take his own life by shooting himself but failed, as he survived the surgery and was put on trial for the murders of Criswell and Martin. Rector was convicted on both counts and sentenced to death. Steak, chicken, cherry-flavored Kool-Aid, and a pecan pie was Rector's final meal request. Seems like a pretty normal meal, right? The weird thing was that Rector kept telling the guard who was taking him to the executioner that he was saving the pie for later, which leads to questions about his awareness and what was about to happen due to severe brain dysfunction. Thomas J. Grasso. On Christmas Eve in 1990, Thomas J. Grasso strangled Hilda Johnson, an 87-year-old woman, using her Christmas tree lights in her home. He then went on to steal $8 from her purse, $4 in loose change, and her television set, which he later sold for $125. Then 6 months later, after moving to New York with his wife, he murdered Leslie Holtz, an 81-year-old man from Staten Island. stealing his Social Security check. Thomas was then executed by lethal injection at Oklahoma State Penitentiary in 1995. For his last meal, he requested 2 dozen steamed mussels, 2 dozen steamed clams, a double cheeseburger from Burger King, half dozen barbecue spare ribs, 2 strawberry milkshakes, half a pumpkin pie with whipped cream and dyed strawberries, and a can of SpaghettiOs served at room temperature. However, he did not receive the can of SpaghettiOs and was served regular spaghetti instead. He was so upset that when he was given a chance to say his final words, he said, "I did not get my SpaghettiOs. I got canned spaghetti. I want the press to know this." Stephen Michael Woods Jr. Stephen Michael Woods Jr. was a 31-year-old American who was sentenced to death after a jury convicted him of the capital murders of 21-year-old Ronald Whitehead and a 19-year-old Bethany Bros in 2001 in Texas. Woods' co-defendant Marcus Rhodes pleaded guilty to shooting both victims to death with a firearm in the same criminal transaction and received a life sentence. During the trial, authorities were revealed to have recovered backpacks belonging to the slain pair along with shell casings and bloody knife in Rhodes' car. Guns used in the slaying were also recovered from the home of Rhodes' parents. Although Rhodes pleaded guilty to the murders and Woods did not, and no physical evidence tied to Woods to the scene, Woods was executed for the crime. Rhodes received a life sentence and Woods was given the death penalty. There were many protests to attempt to halt the execution of Woods, but they were unfortunately unsuccessful, as Woods was given the lethal injection in 2011. He was still protesting his innocence even in the execution chamber, as he told the witnesses that they were about to see a murder, not an execution. For his last meal, Woods requested 2 pounds of bacon, a large 4-meat pizza, 4 fried chicken breasts, 2 drinks of each of Mountain Dew, Pepsi, root beer, and sweet tea, 2 pints of ice cream, 5 chicken fried steaks, 2 hamburgers with bacon, fries, and a dozen garlic breadsticks with marinara on the side. Now that's a bigger feast than the one Hogwarts threw for Christmas. Robert Dale Conklin. In 1984, a maintenance worker employed at Robert Dale Conklin's apartment complex found black plastic garbage bags filled with blood and body parts. The body parts were identified as those of attorney George Crooks, who was acquainted with Conklin and had begun a relationship with him. When Conklin's apartment was searched, police found the bed clothing was missing, and the mattress appeared to be blood-soaked. The jammed kitchen garbage disposal contained what appeared to be internal organs. When questioned, Conklin stated that he and Crooks were wrestling on the bed when he grabbed a screwdriver and stabbed him, then pushed the screwdriver into his ear and wiggled the weapon around. Conklin admitted to dissecting the body and disposing of incriminating evidence in the dumpster. A book describing the dissection of a body was found on the bedroom floor. For this horrific crime, Robert Dale Conklin was executed by lethal injection in 2005. His crime might have made you lose your appetite due to it being so visual, but his last meal request is definitely going to bring it back. He ordered filet mignon wrapped in bacon, deveined shrimp sauteed in garlic butter with lemon, a baked potato with butter, sour cream, chives, and real bacon bits, corn on the cob, asparagus with hollandaise sauce, French bread with butter, goat cheese, cantaloupe, apple pie with vanilla bean ice cream, and an iced tea. Lawrence Russell Brewer. Lawrence Russell Brewer was a 44-year-old white supremacist who, along with Sean Berry and John King, murdered James Beard Jr. The murderers dragged Beard for 3 miles behind a pickup truck along an asphalt road. Beard, who remained conscious for much of his ordeal, was killed about halfway through dragging when his body hit the edge of a culvert, severing his right arm and head. The murderers drove on for another 1.5 miles before dumping his torso in front of a black church. Brewer was executed by lethal injection in 2011, and calling his last meal a massive feast would not be inaccurate. He ordered 2 chicken fried steaks, triple bacon cheeseburger, cheese omelette, large bowl of fried okra, 3 fajitas, 1 pound of barbecue with half loaf of white bread, a meat lover's pizza, 3 root beers, 1 pint of Bluebell vanilla ice cream, and a slab of peanut butter fudge with crushed peanuts. However, Brewer didn't even touch this meal as he told the officials that he was not hungry, and this put an end to an 87-year-old tradition of giving inmates the choice of requesting a last meal in Texas. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn the notifications on for more Trekonscious Rex mind-chomping historical thoughts.